G'day everyone, and welcome to episode 3 of the Risky Rollers podcast. I'm Dalton, and I'm here with Locky.
Hello, everybody.
And I'm also here with our very, very first guest, Charlie from Scenics.
Hello, how are we going?
It's good to have you on, Charlie. You've been one of our mates for a while in one of our local clubs, and you actually made the scenery in our most recent battle report.
Yes, I did indeed. It's good to be here. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, absolutely. So for today's podcast, we're actually going to talk to you a bit about that scenery, what's involved with making it, and how you think about it. And also something that's, I guess, close or important for all of us, which is playing 9th edition with older codices. You, of course, play Eldar. Locky's got his Tyranids, and I guess I try to make guard work here and there. But before we get into those topics, I want to have a quick couple of plugs. Our guest today is Charlie, and he's got his commission terrain set up. Scenics. The link to his Instagram is down in the description. And can we contact you through the Instagram?
Yes, indeed. Just through Instagram would be the easiest way to get in touch with me.
Perfect. So he'll be linked down in the description below on whatever platform you're listening. And also make sure to check out Dice Arcade. Not just dice, but they do all wargaming, board games, and card games you could possibly want. We've ordered plenty of 40k stuff from them that we're using, including some minis, paints, books, as well as we've got some Infinity stuff on the way as well, which will be excellent to get into on the channel.
That's gonna
Lockie
be
and
awesome.
I are super pumped to get into the... Yeah, it's going to be great.
Yeah.
And also you can check out our Discord to chat with us about all this upcoming goodness, and chat with Charlie for that matter. He's pretty active on there as well.
I'm there all the time.
Yeah, I will say quickly that we did have a bit of an error on a few of the descriptions had an old Discord link that was broken. Now that has been fixed and is no longer broken. So if you had that issue,
Discord links are all permanent links.
Yeah. So it's permanent now, and it's been a bit of a process to set it up because it's quite a lengthy, big one. But anyway, it's all working now, so all good.
Yep, that's all sorted. So jump onto the Discord and hang out with us. And then if you want to become a patron as well, we've got our Patreon down there with a shiny new, I think it's working, Patreon exclusive chat in the Discord.
Yes.
It is working, yes.
It's there.
Yeah.
It's not exclusive yet, but it's there.
We'll get there.
Yeah.
But I think that about wraps up for plugs and things. Let's get into it. So if you've watched our latest battle report, and we highly recommend you do, because it's a good one, we had a lot of fun. The board we played over was a lovely scenic board with all of this grassy, foresty hills and trees and things that you've made.
Oh, that's me, yes.
Yes.
I did make it. Yeah,
So-
no, it was good. It's fun to make.
So, how did you actually get involved with making it? Because it's not the standard sort of, GW. You buy a kit, you buy one of their expensive terrain kits and throw some paint at it. You've actually made all this from scratch.
Yeah, I don't know. I like making things. It's kind of my job in real life is to make things and using my hands. And this is sort of just making small things, but to play on, which makes it just keeps me interested and keep me active when I'm at home. So, change up from painting models and all that sort of stuff. I actually like to create battlegrounds essentially to play on.
Yeah.
Did you
It's some really...
Sorry. We'll cut each other. No, I was coming back to what Dalton was saying, that the standard, even like when I started making terrain, it was ruins, and because you kind of just, in my head anyway, it's like that's just kind of like the easiest thing to make, whether you're using like foam core or cardboard or whatever. But all your stuff is all real natural stuff. So is there a specific reason why sort of that, as opposed to like cityscape stuff that you sort of specialize in or enjoy doing, or
Well, because my job as being a landscaper in real life, I do enjoy outside sort of grass and scenery and hills and mountains and rivers and that sort of stuff. And I guess that's why I sort of went that direction, building trees and mountains and a waterfall and all that sort of thing. So I think that's what interested me first off. Like that's why I went that direction. I haven't actually really tried building many ruins yet, but I will be getting onto that with my next board, which is going to be an Orc sort of base board, Orc factory. So it'll be a lot more of your conventional terrain pieces with some other little bits mixed in. But from all the videos I've watched, like online and all that sort of stuff, they always look really interesting techniques, and I kind of like really interested. I like chucking myself into the deep end quite a lot.
Yeah.
And just taking that extra step to actually, you know, try and create a thing that looks looks really realistic. And I think that's kind of attracted me to the trees as well.
Yeah, I mean, cause that's
looking at
the
it, you've
thing.
gone right into like the scenic terrain side of things. I mean, I take it you've got packets and packets of woodland scenic stuff that's sitting there.
So much stuff, it's ridiculous.
It reminds me of my days in the model railroading sort of scene, because it's a lot of the same sort of setup where you're making all of that natural scenery from scratch.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, so there's a lot of videos I watched where a lot of the railroad guys who do it, and quite a lot of that is, you know, transferable onto the gaming board. Obviously, you have to get the scale right. That's the one thing that's slightly different. But yeah, no, it'll sort of it's quite well, like quite good to transfer across to the tabletop.
Yeah, I mean it comes across really well, and it's an interesting step away from the almost like the heroic style of Games Workshop terrain, or it's a very, very specific style. You can look at a bit of 40k specific terrain and go, that's 40k. It's like the proportions and the all the stuff they built into it. And it's nice to step away from that and go, well, you've got all this scenic terrain that looks fantastic, and it's not just, you know, the Citadel color system slapped over a bit of plastic. There's depth and there's texture to it. Yeah, there's a lot of steps to actually creating these terrain pieces, rather than just, you know, getting plastic and sticking it together from a terrain box set from GW. It's a lot more involved, I guess. A lot more components to it, so a lot more materials that I have to buy and sort of store. So my hobby room is pretty intense right now. It's got a lot of things in a lot of places. So.
I mean, I think it's a good breakup too, right? Like, you know, what you were saying before about the GW standard, or even any other kind of standard of terrain. I guess, you know, Infinities is very building modular style. That this kind of system that you're doing, or the terrain that you're making here, it's kind of like a change of scenery. You know, that especially in 40k, because everything, whether it be color palettes, everything is just quite, you know, dark, or, you know, it's very drab, dreary. Yeah, exactly. You know, so having these kinds of nature things, I reckon, really breaks it up heaps. And I think it was a huge compliment to, like, our latest bat rep, right? Was because of that.
It was a great really board to play on, and the cut. Like, yeah. The armies are very dark and monotone, both of them.
Yeah, and then it just makes your board seems, it's like, and even so, like when you see boards that even are in a cityscape or whatever, and it's still ruined, it's like stuff still grows. Yeah, like it's not, you know, the ability to mix up boards with like a third of some greenery and finding that way of making it work, it always seems to make it so much more appealing and lived in and real. And you've definitely started with something that's, as you said, a lot harder. You know, it's not the easy thing to make, you know, good looking. You've just skipped all the entry level stuff. You're like, nah, I'm just running, bro. Like I'm just going straight to the end. It's good. I love it. It's the way you do it, man. Like sink or swim. Yeah.
Yeah. Exactly. You got to test yourself, otherwise it gets monotonous and boring. So, I like trying new techniques and new things, and I enjoy it. To be fair.
Yeah, I mean, and it was a great board to play on for a variety of reasons as well. But all the different terrain pieces you've done they all seem to fit really well with the game and the way that Ninth Edition terrain works. And so perhaps we didn't use two of the best armies for utilising terrain, given that Knights sort of ignore most of it.
Yeah.
But there were loads of different elevations and places for models to be. Again, we didn't really utilise it too much, but there were bits of terrain that we went, these can be obscuring and these bits can be dense, and we can place other barricades on these bits of terrain and use them in all sorts of different ways. Do you tend to think about that and incorporate the way that terrain's going to work in the game when you're building it, or is it more of just a fluid process?
So when I started off, it was a bit just I'll get this bit down and see what happens. But now, as I'm getting more into it and building more terrain pieces, I'm thinking about what can be put onto this terrain piece to sort of bring it to the next level. It can be it doesn't have to be built into the actual terrain piece. It can be like an external piece that you have. Like for instance, the waterfall feature terrain piece that has a flat platform there, which you can bring in like a temple, or you can bring in like a totem or something like that, or anything else just to bring it to that extra level of realism and also
nice.
playability as well.
And
then
change
also
it up
bringing
so it's
in
not the same terrain piece in every game.
Exactly. And also when building up higher, also building in layers so you can actually fit models onto those next levels is something that I've been picking up or sort of adapting to and sort of evolving to. So it makes pieces more playable, and they just look a lot more. They're playable, but also look realistic at the same time.
Yeah, I remember that. We noticed that, That was at one of the club days where we had one of your... I think it was one of the first ones that you'd ever made, and it was...
It was my first one, yeah.
Yeah, it was done in a way where it was to give kind of... I mean, it's radio, right? So we can't see images or anything, but could just think of a hill, but the slope of the hill is quite steep. But it was this...
Right, so we couldn't put any models on the side of it. They all fell off.
Yeah, or if you did, they kind of
They
were
did.
half falling off or whatever. And it was just one of those things that, I think we spoke about, and you'd already recognised it straight away going, that's good. And that's good. Like, that's how these kinds of things should be done. It's not just looks, it's also how it works. So...
Yeah.
And I think I like the variety in a lot of the more recent ones you've done as well, where there are places that you can't put models because you basically treat it as impassable terrain, and there's places where there's nice big flat areas you can put entire units.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah,
and it lets you
so
have that
think
variety.
a bit more. Yeah, and it's also you've got to think about your movement as a bit more rather than saying, "Oh, there's a hill there, I can go over it. It's pretty easy to move across it." Whereas this time is you can come around and be like, "Oh, I can't get the whole unit up there, so won't be incoherency or whatever." So maybe I can't take that direction. I've got to maybe move around somewhere else to take a different direction to get over that terrain piece, and brings an extra level of sort of thinking through your move essentially, which I think is really cool as well.
Oh, and I mean Ninth has got a better relationship with terrain than most of the previous editions in recent memory. So being able to have that variety and be thinking about it when you're building them means that you can really enhance the game before you've even sat down to play.
Yeah, exactly.
I think one of the other good things about it being a bit more, quote unquote natural, is the fact that you're not as strictly controlled by the terrain rules. For example, like if you build a ruin, it's a ruin, right? It's literally by their definition of their template, it's a ruin. Where you can build anything naturally, like your waterfall thing, right? For example, you could call it like difficult ground or whatever.
Yeah, right.
Well, that's what I did. Sorry.
There you go. Go on.
That's what I did with the bogs. So I built 2 bogs, and that's actually difficult terrain. It's not like your crater, which is your standard sort of your board. I've actually made them into bogs, which essentially makes it look like it's a crater, but it's really it's just difficult terrain. It just looks a bit slightly different than a big explosion site sort of
right.
thing.
Yeah.
So I mean, you could easily see those being done as difficult terrain, or you could call it dense terrain. Be like, oh, it's a foggy swamp area. Or
exactly.
you could put up. I think I put some barricades in the bogs in the last board, and you can basically go, well, this is a bit of a wet, muddy, fortified position. Like it gives you that variety where it's not all right. That's a GW, ruins set. therefore it has these rules every time. You know,
But I mean,
it
even if it's not
gives you
G'd
that
up,
freedom.
right? Like even if it is just
Right, yeah.
a ruined, like a cityscape style of the board, I think you just have more. You have more flexibility with like nature style stuff, which, you know,
Yeah.
I think it's just in general it should always be included in every board as at least one, maybe 3 pieces of natural. Like, doesn't necessarily have to be green with trees, you know, but just some. Unless obviously specifically you're playing like City Fight or whatever.
Yeah.
But overall, you know, I think it's.
But having a bit of
creates so much
landscaping
more
involved as well.
Yeah, well, it creates so much more player flexibility, I think. And you know, if you whether you're playing like a tournament or not, or you're just playing with your friends, especially if you're playing a narrative game, you can go to town with it. Like, it's a lot easier to tell a narrative story through, like, as you say, like some creepy foggy bog thing, as opposed to, oh, this is just a half destroyed building. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
This half destroyed building number 378.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. I mean, I think now that you mentioned the bit where you can put your on your waterfall piece, you mentioned you've got that platform you built specifically to put something on it.
Yeah.
I think I remember you showing me, because you've got some Eldar specific like buildings and terrain, and you showed me how that you'd done it in such a way that most of those could be placed on there to sort of really tie it into your army and keep that theme up.
Yeah, well, yeah. So also the theme of the board I was building was to be like a Eldar maiden world. So it's supposed to be green. It's supposed to be pretty, and it will be like there's supposed to be like old temples for the old gods and all that sort of stuff. So yeah, when I built that last piece, it was specifically designed for that sort of a space for like a temple or something to go onto it. But it can be transferable into another army. Say they've come along like the Necrons, and they can put on there. You've got a terrain piece, which is an obelisk. You can put that there, and say they've taken
several
it
of
over.
them sitting unpainted in a box here.
We all have piles of shame.
But yeah, no, but that's a really cool touch, and it helps include that terrain with the narrative for your army and that sort of thing.
Yeah, exactly. That was the plan anyway. So, So the next piece is going to be similar. So there's going to be a definite direction of movement up the piece, which I've built into it. So just need to start getting onto it, I think. But hopefully I'll be. By the time we get out this lockdown, and I'll have it finished.
Oh, you mean if we get out of this lockdown, bro?
True.
So
ever get to play again?
Yeah, I know. Jesus, it just feels like it's never ending, innit? Was there anything specific when you were kind of going through your video watching stuff, like for anyone that's sort of out there trying to get into it, that you would recommend? That you like? Was there any YouTubers or anyone that you've gone, this dude's or this girl's videos are amazing or whatever?
So one of the main ones was Geek Gaming. Luke APS.
Luke
Geek's
APS.
Gaming. His stuff is amazing. So that's who I base my waterfall stuff off that. So that's how I build my rocks. Is one of his techniques. I actually use his compound.
The one he actually sells, yeah.
Yeah, his one actually sells. Yeah, so I use that.
That's pretty cool.
It dries in like 10 minutes. It's workable in like 15 minutes. It's really really good. Really good stuff. And then the Terrain Tutor is another one I watch.
He's the kind of the older dude, right? And he it's like his early vids is just out of his like garage or something.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. My girlfriend loves him.
He's pretty good. He's pretty laid back. He's like this old dude. He's got this like old smoker's voice.
Hard.
It's quite funny. yeah. But he does some good stuff. He did a lot of railway stuff. And then now he's just moved into wargaming more recently.
Oh right, okay. So yeah, we'll chuck
a big
chuck
crossover
those...
right in this.
Sorry.
Yeah, no. As Locky was saying, we'll chuck those links down in the description.
Yeah, sorry, man.
Definitely,
Go on.
I was just commenting. There's a lot of crossover between the model railroads and the wargaming sector, right in that sort of terrain and scenic terrain area.
Exactly. Yeah. So yeah, those two are probably my biggest inspirations, or like biggest people I've watched to actually get sort of the hang of doing it, especially building trees. Those two were the ones I watched the most, and then obviously for making the hills and everything, that was Geek Gaming, and then to do the washes and different levels of washes to get that sort of color depth rather than just having black and grey. He actually does like a red wash, a yellow wash, and a blue wash, and then then you paint it, and then it just makes it a bit more realistic, I find.
Do you find yourself
all rock?
Yeah. Do you find yourself looking at like real pictures and stuff sometimes? Like if you kind of have some idea in your head of what you want. Do you find yourself doing kind of like real world research a bit?
Yeah, well, kind of again with my job, I use a lot of rock as well. So one of my things is dry stone walling. So I use a lot of rock in day-to-day sort of jobs and stuff. So I always have a lot of it lying around, so I can just go into my garden and have a look.
That's
look
good.
at the piles of leftover materials and stuff. So
because that's one
inspiration from real world stuff.
That's definitely one thing. Like when I was in my game design days, when you're dealing with artists and stuff like that, you always used to say to them, they're trying to model something, and if it was something that's real, just get it, like, and actually hold it in your hand and look at it or whatever, and so many people, they don't do that, or they just kind of just go, they think of something in their head and kind of go it that way. And it's like one of the best things that you can do is just to look at a real world example of it and see how it actually works. And I think 9 times out of 10, the people that do that are the people that have a better product at the end as opposed to the people who don't. And it's not hard to do,
So what was crazy for me, the first time I ever had a stone in my hand, I end up sticking it to the board, whatever, and then I end up painting it to look like a stone.
Oh,
I'm it's like it seems really backwards, but you kind of have to when you have to base it and all that sort of stuff. So yeah, it's quite funny.
I mean, every single model that I paint, barring my sisters, all have real rocks on them. Not only because like it's the shapes, I think, that sells it. Yeah, okay, you're never going to paint it as good, but you're fitting it into something, into a desired sort of general look, right? So you have to paint it. But I think it's the cut. So you could never, I mean, you could, but to sit there and cut styrofoam or whatever with the kind of those jagged like angles and stuff, just use it real. And also, there's nothing better.
It's never going to look that random or real.
Yeah, but I also love the old metal models, right? So you're going to make these plastic models feel a bit more weighty. It's same with terrain. Like when you pick up something and it's like heavy and big, you're like, oh yeah. I don't know. It's just, if it's heavier, it feels better.
Weight is reliability.
That's it. See, it's very old school.
Yeah. Speaking of old school and metal models, Charlie, you'd have quite a bit of experience with metal models. You are playing the Elder these days.
I am. I have some. Yes, I have some metal models, some metal rangers sitting there.
Old
yes, we have a very
Rangers
outdated product. Yeah, we've got lots of models who are not really with the times, let's say.
A lot of those sculpts are older than I am.
A lot of the sculpts are also older than I am, which is crazy.
So, I think the Banshee kit's like the oldest. No, is it Striking
Oh,
Scorpion?
no, they got
redone.
Oh, did it?
The Banshee kit got redone last year
is
with Jane's art.
Yeah.
Ah, that's
and
true.
Yeah, I think it's the Striking Scorpions. It's the
Scorpions, is the oldest.
Yeah,
one.
so I've got some metal scorpions, and I've also got some failcast scorpions as well.
And the metal pose, right, was where they couldn't do out of like the designs were always like knee to elbow, right? It was always like they had to have like a knee touching an elbow kind of thing to fit with how they could get, and they're like leaning to one side, and they're like,
so they're all very
the same plane.
Yeah, that's it.
So they've literally got a gun forward, a sword up. That's pretty much it.
Yeah.
Weapons.
All facing the same direction.
I imagine it looks like it's people in cosplay, like taking a photo at PAX, right? Hey,
right?
Like that's the pose.
Yeah. I mean, there's nothing better than the classic metal. Look, my weapons pose, where they've got both arms up in the air, both feet wide on the ground.
Yeah.
And
that is the metal striking scorpions.
Yeah. It's a classic pose. I mean, they got a bit better towards the end, where they were end of metal, where they were casting different parts that could be glued on in different directions, and they would do them separately.
Yeah.
So there are some plasticish ones, resin ones, I think now, but they're still the same pose.
Yeah, they just that was the whole transition to Finecast, was that they didn't make new molds; they just used resin in the old metal machines.
Yeah,
which is one of the reasons that there's so many errors with Failcast minis.
Yeah, like there's loads of ones with like the warp spiders. They still got the old pose, but they're now plasto resin, whatever it is, Failcast, and then the Dark Reapers as well. They're still the same Finecast terrible pose.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And Rangers.
And Rangers, they're the same. They're terrible, terrible guns that snap. If you just look at the gun, it snaps.
Yeah.
It's terrible.
So how are you finding them, Eldar? I mean, playing an 8th edition codex in 9th edition. And, you know, I mean, barring prior to the lockdown, we were all playing quite a lot. I mean, we were playing, you know, at least one game of TTS and between 1 and 3 games a week, you know, in person.
Yeah.
How do you find it?
It's not as straightforward as playing other armies, that's for sure. What I've learned, because obviously when I started, I was a total noob and I just wanted to run in guns blazing and shoot everything off the board, and it's really not like that with the 8th edition codex in 9th. It's just you've got to play the objective, and with the Eldar they're super squishy, so I try to bring models that are a bit more resistant, I guess, like with the Wraith Guard, the Wraith Blades with their 4-up invulnerable and, you know, strength 6, toughness 6, just makes them a bit more playable against, say, armies like Admech, who just have so many shots. You just got to play a lot more tactically. You got to play the objective a lot more. Lots of out of line of sight shooting. For me, anyway, just because of the really low toughness. And yeah, I guess you just got to play the rule of cool sometimes. Because the Eldar aren't really that competitive. Let's be honest now. Got big guns that just don't fire enough.
On a general sense. No.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Looking jealously at their dark kin with their D3+3 dark lances, where your bright lances are stuck on the old D6, which always manages to roll that 1 or a 2.
Hey,
always,
look,
and I like rolling 1s and 2s.
Eldar had their time in the sun for 6th and 7th edition, right? Like,
oh, absolutely.
Like they reigned supreme for like 6 years straight or whatever. So I'm pretty sure that the rest of the other factions are deserving of some love.
The thing is,
the Eldar.
Granted, none of us were around for that, though, right?
Yeah,
I was around for that.
Sorry, of course you were playing then. I wasn't.
Yeah, I wasn't very good, but I was playing.
Hadn't had my return yet.
No.
Which I'm very happy for, actually, to be honest. The stories I hear of 6th and 7th edition, and it's just like, oh, Jesus.
I mean, we're very negative on 8th and 9th a lot of the time, but 6th and 7th was another level of broken.
Yeah, it sounds horrifically stupid. The things they had in.
But yeah, it must be challenging to come at 9th with an army that doesn't have the tools. Because you're talking about playing the mission and playing the objectives, and it's hard to play that when the army doesn't have the tools.
And the thing is, everybody else is also playing the objective, and so you can play the objective. But the thing is, you've got to then stay on the objective when the other team they're also playing it as well. So there's lots of things you've got to. So the secondaries is where Eldar really shine, I guess. Doing retrieve Octarius data, and engage in all fronts. These were like sort of mainstays of my army. just because we can jump around the board. We've got ways of doing it with the old codex, with the but the Shining Spears, they're still great in every edition.
Yep.
And the Wraith Seers, they have a newer, updated data sheet, so that makes them quite good.
Came out, earlier in the
exactly, year. The Impendium, so they have D3 plus 3 for their damage, which can be D3 plus 5, which is ridiculous. With we swap out Smite with Witch Strike, and that's just really good.
So that's a psychic power, right? That you cast on yourself?
Psychic power.
Yeah.
It buffs up the Wraith's weapon to be very tanky.
A tank killer. Yeah, it's a tank killer.
Yeah, it's crazy. But I mean, the gun as well, right? Like the shoulder gun is nothing to scoff at either, right? It's like a strength. It's the D cannon, right? So it's D3 shot, strength 10, D6 damage. Yeah.
Strength 12.
Strength 12. Yeah, I mean, like.
Yeah, it's ridiculous.
It's still
and shit's out line of sight.
Yeah, I mean, you take that with some what are they called? We spoke about them recently. Oh, the other out of line sight shooting thingos.
Oh, the is it the Night Spinners?
Night Spinners. There you go. Yeah. And them plus your Fire and Fading Dark Reapers, like, I don't know. I mean, what that dude
you could
in England
definitely build a very memey list there.
Yeah, I mean, you can.
Yeah, totally. Yeah.
I mean, at the same time, I think, as you say, it's not an easy army to play because you have to know the book backwards, right? To compete.
You do.
It's not one of these
know your strats.
Space Marine, Admech, Drukhari kind of situations where you could literally play without stratagems and still win.
Yeah. I mean, like, there's someone else in our group who's looking to start Dark Eldar, and they're sort of going, "Oh, look, I'm not sure what to take," and it's very easy then to go, "Oh, take what you think's cool because it's all good."
You'll still win, like nearly every game.
You'll still win a lot.
You'll still win the game. Just pick cool units. You're set. Whereas with Eldar, and it's been really good seeing you learn how to play it and really play it to a fantastic level at this point.
I try sometimes. My rolling lets me down ever so often. Ones and twos.
Say that, right?
I don't understand why.
You roll sixes like flat out. I don't know what it is, but against me, I'm always getting -3 on everything shuriken from you.
I mean, against everything else, I'm assuming that like Slaanesh has it out for you and has just somehow gotten to your dice, because I've never seen you roll well against anyone else. But as far as that goes, like, to the point where as Locky was saying, you've got to know that book inside and out. You've got to be playing. I mean, I was saying that the Night Spinners and the Wraith is a bit of a memey list, but you've kind of got to make the old.
Yeah, you have to, of course. I mean that, and then souping with Harleys, right?
Yeah.
I mean, that's
even with Harley's old codex, they're still competitive. They're still like viable in ninth.
Yeah.
You mean like mono
they got
Harleys?
Lucky and
yeah, for sure.
They've kind of gone downhill recently with some of the other armies coming out, but like Drukhari now kind of just do what mono Harleys do better.
Way better.
But as far as but as far as like 8 books that made the transition well, Harleys definitely did, and I think it's partly because they happened to be an entire army built around the tools needed to work in ninth, which was movement and durability.
And just weird, like janky clutch things they can do, and not even necessarily clutch, just weird janky abilities that they have in their toolbox where they can just randomly do this, or oh well, when you've done that, now this is happening, and you're like, what? It's annoying.
Well,
but cool, and I like.
With,
go on. No, you're right.
I was going to say, you've got a similar struggle with running your Tyranids, is that you really have to run them hard and run a really competitive list just to have a chance of it in ninth.
Yeah, pretty much. So, I mean, I've tried every which way possible, I think, to make... And there are a few builds, like you can run a very warrior heavy build and run that sort of structure, which can work. But primarily, you're either doing one of two things, and it's Forge World monsters supported by bugs, very heavily relying on your shooting, or it's Gaunt Carpet with a few key psychic characters. And they're really the main two things that exist for Tyranids competitively. But also even like on a general level, like, you know, when we play, I still bring my Daimokaron and my Barbed Hierodual, because if I don't, and if I say I swap them and I take the Trigon instead of the Daimokaron and Tyrannifex instead of, they're just nowhere near even like remotely competing. And now at the point where even those Forge World model units aren't even that good, you know, majority of people still find a way to kill them quite easily. But then at the same time, I think you need to sit in the same boat that Eldar do, when if you have a player that knows the book back to front and relies on the movement that they have, because they have some crazy movement. Like, I've played games where I've literally moved my Swarmlord to every corner of the board in 5 turns.
Yeah.
You just can.
Yeah.
You know, literally running, having an entire army shift from one kind of deployment to the other, where with your double moving Gene Stealers, and you're using stratagems to move again and like overrun and running Kraken and all these kinds of things, which Eldar have as well, in that sense that you can just pivot and then your whole army is now done like a 90-degree shift and is at a completely different deployment, looking at a different way. And to an opponent that doesn't know what they're doing from a ninth objective point of view, they're like, what? They're like, what do I kill now?
Yeah.
Like, everything's now just completely shifted and moved. Yeah, you haven't killed anything, but it's cool. And again, it's just the problem that I think, Charlie, you hit the nail on the head before, where the new armies that are coming out aren't just killy, they've also got that weird, you know, movement jank. Or it's like they have some weird tech ability, like a lot of the tech stuff that AdMech has, or that Sisters have, that's probably even more techy, really. To just have things happen or deny happening, and, like, you know, everyone's taken that whole Harlequin treatment and turn it up, but then also they can kill you in 2 seconds, or the opposite of that, or they're super durable and you can't kill them, you know, like, it's so, I mean, look, it's sad to see that neither of us are going to get our books until the end of next year, which is a bit sad, but
it is sad.
I try and see the
Definitely,
positive in that
they're
going.
two really cool armies.
I try and see the positive going, well, that potentially means they're lining up for 2 really big releases. We all know the Eldar release is going to be massive, and I hope it's broken. I hope they do a bit of a broken thing for a bit, or there's something about it is cool and unique.
I just want new models. Just new models. New models would be good, you know?
Yeah.
New model line. Please.
Yeah.
Come on.
And look,
new aspects.
If they've... The way they're going regarding their model release and their latest codex design, and I'm going to be very specific about what I've just said in those words, it's good. They're doing some good things and some right things. So I think it's there's some positivity on the horizon regarding those. It's just we've just got to wait. And, you know, I think the December book is Gene Stealer Cults. I do not think it's Nids. And I'd be very unimpressed if it was a Nids release, because I don't think it needs to be pushed with another book. I think it needs a whole book on its own. We'll see what the Octarius thing has for us, because those Synapse rules looked really cool. I hope they expand on those a little bit more. I think that's really, really awesome. You kind of... Yeah. We're doing a deep dive into that stuff when that comes out for sure. So, for Tyranid fans out there, be ready for that.
And I suppose it's something that's worth making a distinction of as well. That having a thought about, which is that as the edition does march on and the books come out, there is a bit of power creep happening, and you do end up with better books. I mean, on the one hand, hopefully both the Eldar and Nid books are excellent. But it does then raise a bit of a difference then, because I mean, I tend to play Necrons as my main force, and they were the first one to get a 9th edition book, and I'll stand right here and say it, I still like their book. It's a really solid book. I think it makes them play really well. Unfortunately, as the edition's gone on, we found out it's a bad book. It's not a good codex. It hasn't held up very well. But there's still...
Which is a shame.
It's a shame, yeah. I mean, look, I still think it's a well-designed, internally balanced codex. I think the way everything inside it functions and fits together works really well. And it's still fun to play. Which is a strength of the, I guess, the 9th style of books they're doing. But the main thing I've found is that I can still take that to a game, even against Drukhari or Admech or any of the busted ones, and I've got the toolbox there to play the game, which is something that the Eldar and the Nids really, and other 8th codices, don't really have, and it's a difference there that's, I think, is worth pointing out. You can have a bad book and still be able to play the game and be active throughout the whole thing.
Yeah, definitely.
I mean, the biggest example of that, right, or the biggest evidence towards that, is secondary objectives. Like, having an army-specific secondary objectives, even if they just came out...
helps so much.
Oh, massively. If they just came out and had them all written and just gave them all as an errata to every faction, you would see significant changes. It would be huge.
It would be a massive shake-up to the way the game was played.
A massive change. I mean, and... Look, you know, Necrons, I think the Necrons of Space Marine book were tests. You know, they were tests for the community to see, you know, did we do the right thing? No, I don't know. Like, I always feel that sometimes GW are just like got their hands up going, but Queen OS does, so like, you know, whatever. Let's just see what happens, kind of thing, without, you know, kind of discussions on previous ones. Like, are these people doing their actual research? Who knows? They probably are, right? Obviously, they most likely are. But I feel like because of the difference in how they came, what was in them internally, and then also how they interacted with each other, that these two were the templates that were like, oh, okay, cool. We've just gotten confirmation now that we're doing all the right things. Now let's build upon that. And build upon that. Which is okay, but as you say, also the problem with codexes coming out individually, and I guess sometimes the benefit of codexes coming out individually is you can see certain, like, the resurgence of certain things. So I wouldn't be surprised that if certain other armies come out and as the edition moves towards more a combat driven MSU / horde MSU, so like, you know, hoarding it with as many units as possible. That Necron destroyer lists might become really prevalent, or, you know, teching into combat, and because they do have some really epic stuff in that regard, it just hasn't been good up to this point, right? And then when that starts to shift and everyone's got their books, or at least maybe a few more of the bigger factions, it will kind of be able to balance out, or it won't, and I think that'll be the real decider of whether you go, this was a good or this was a bad book.
But I mean, I think that comes back around to that idea that as the meta changes and more books come out, the Necrons have all the tools sitting there, hopefully at least, but it does look like they do. They have all the tools sitting there to properly play the game as it evolves, and to be able to adapt to it. Whereas, you know, maybe the older books don't, because even as the meta's changed so far, your Nids list hasn't really had to change much because there's nowhere further for it to go. You've sort of pushed it to
pretty much.
I mean, I'm sure that there's small tweaks that you're always making small tweaks and changes and things, but it's diminishing returns at this point. You've kind of pushed it as far as you can.
Yeah.
With the
I don't think I've changed the Swarm Lord, Brood Lord, Neurothroat, and Gene Stealers and Hive Guard out of my list at all, ever. You know, they just don't. They're always the start, and that's well over 1,000 points, like that.
Yeah,
you know, and that doesn't
basically
change.
You're fiddling with peripherals and seeing just like the little tweaks you can do right on the edge. It's not changing the core of the list. It's not changing that core gimmick that your list has, or the core idea of how you're playing it.
That's the thing, and that's on a general level, you know. And you take that to the competitive point, and there's really only one build really. Really only one,
Yeah.
maybe two.
Yeah.
One's the Harridan build, and then one's the like double triple Dharmakira on Kraken Kronos build.
Yeah.
Like that's it. You know, and I do think that Eldar are doing a little bit better, or can do a little bit better with how things are changing, with especially with the influx of Grey Knights of Thousand Suns. I think Eldar are going to see
The more psychic armies there. Yeah.
huge kick up.
Oh, we're gonna be a crazy psychic army, I think.
Yeah,
when
they're
this
going
new
to
book
have
comes out.
a huge kick up there because you know, like T Suns are great in their psychic phase, which is just horrendously crazy.
Yeah.
But their shooting's alright and their combat is mediocre. You know, Eldar's shooting is pretty epic. It can be anyway. Roll pretty high.
Yeah.
The psychic is pretty good, and if you tech it, the combat can be really decent too. You know, they're kind of like a higher than average. You know, they're the Space Marines of the Xenos armies, whatever. They kind of can do everything, sort of thing. You know what I mean?
Kinda, yeah.
They can. Definitely their shooting's pretty good. It's the strength of the guns that they have. Like some of the guns are just a bit unnecessarily strong. They don't need to be that strong nowadays.
But you say that though, right? You say that 8th edition. You look at now with like Death Guard still being a big player. Orcs haven't even come in yet, really, and everything's T5.
Yeah.
When everything's strength 6, majority of all the weapons you have are strength 6. And
That
above,
becomes a really big deal.
it becomes awesome. It's same thing. Tau have the same thing, right? That's exactly the same sort of situation. But I just think that I have no idea what they're going to do with Tau to make Tau work. It's just like I have no idea what they're going to do with Imperial Guard to make them work. But Eldar's pretty easy. Well, not easy, but it's easier because they've already got that really inbuilt, fast-moving adaptation part of their, you know, their army that they have that works perfectly well with 9th edition.
Yeah.
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 I'm looking forward to it. I'm excited to see what they do. I don't want it to be broken. I kind of like, I've had a little play with the Orcs, and their book isn't like epic or broken. It doesn't seem that broken. It just seems like a bit of fun.
Yeah.
I'm kind of hoping that Elder is not like the AdMech, which has gone over the top and been so broken. I kind of wish it has like some little cool little tricks. Still need a bit of know how to actually play the game. You don't need to just put a world down and kill something like instantly.
Well, I think
like
the GK and T Suns books are a good reference of what you're saying, and they are.
Yeah.
They fit the fluff a little bit more. They have strong linear power a certain way based on their faction. They also have like a somewhat learning curve / memory curve to overcome, but they're beatable. They can be horrific if they teched in a certain way, but that's not necessarily always the best option. And that's, to me, like Death Guard's like that. You know, they're good. They're just, in my opinions, eyes of a well-designed book for a game. So I agree. I hope that goes that way for sure.
I mean, that's always a good thing for a codex to be, because you want it to be well balanced against the other books, so you can keep playing games with your mates and having a good time, and not just showing up and winning because you've got the best book, and therefore it's no fun anymore. Like, you want it all to work well. You want to have fun playing your army the way you feel like it should be played in the lore. You want to have a tight, close game, and be able to do it again next week and have something entirely different happen.
I mean, like, perfect example of exactly that, right, is I've literally said how many times to our group when we're setting up a TTS game, who's playing tonight, and I go, not AdBank. unless
it's just not fun.
No, and that's what I mean. Unless we were doing, which we were doing tournament prep, and I said to a few of the boys, I'm like, bring your crazy AdMech clicks, because I know I'm going to fight it at the tournament. So let's play it.
Build
and let's
that
do
nasty
some
AdMech
prep,
list,
right?
and let's do it.
Exactly. So, you know, and that's bad. When that's happening, that's bad, right? How do you find that, Charlie? Like, because we were going to go to a couple of tournaments, and you were going to bring your Eldar. Did you find that you had to tech into Forge World a lot, or was there any differences when approaching a tournament, sort of thing?
So I was going to bring quite a fun list anyway, just because I'm very aimed towards the Wraith units. I think they look great. They're some of the more modern looking units. So I wasn't going to go with like infantry and stuff, which is kind of what you bring to a tournament because you want the OBSEC and all that sort of stuff. So nothing I had was OBSEC, but I was bringing Forge World units, which is obviously the Wraith Seers, and I was bringing 2 of them. because they're that good. And so I had a couple of practices, and I was bringing. I had a Lynx, which is another Forge World unit, which is a tank. It's really good.
So cool.
Yeah,
It's
and then I had Hornets as well, which is another Forge
Also
World
fantastic.
models.
Yeah.
So I was running half my army was taken up by points from Forge World, just purely because they're the only ones that are really actually good. But I went more the Wraith unit just because I love the models. I'm a sucker for the models.
And the
lore's
lore
pretty
too as well is so awesome.
Yeah,
I mean, luckily
and I had
Wraith
Shadow Spectres as well,
Oh yeah, Shadow.
Oh yes,
which
they're
which
fantastic.
is another
models. You don't
Forge World
need to
unit.
Forge World,
Yeah.
paint job on them. Yeah.
Can you actually field an entire? There's no Forge World troop option, is there?
There's not, no.
Yeah, but you don't have to bring troops these days.
But they've got HQ. They've got Ilrith. He's in HQ. He's Forge World. He's actually one of the better Phoenix Lords. He's a bit more usable. But so technically you could. You don't have to bring. You can bring. You can make it like a Vanguard or a Spearhead or something.
I could imagine
have
bringing
to
a
be-
Spearhead, which is an HQ, a couple of Wraith Seers, your Lynx, bunch of Hornets in the single fast attack slot because they can squat up in
Exactly.
threes.
Yeah, they can. Yeah.
That's going to be a pretty solid chunk of points right there.
Or,
That is a lot of points. Yes.
I mean, or you could go full crazy and go Outrider and Spearhead. I don't know if you
Right,
get the
yeah.
points with like 2 Lynx, 6 Hornets, because you can run two in a
Your
squad,
Shining
right?
Spears. Oh, not your Shining
Your
Spears.
Shining
your,
Spears.
Shadow Spectres.
Yeah.
Shadow Spectres.
You Shadow Spectres, is it?
Yeah,
They're elites. Yeah.
yeah, and then you.
Yeah.
It's
well,
annoying
then
that the
you can
races
fit one
aren't
elite
HQ
into-
anymore.
Yeah.
Look, we have so many HQ choices, though. That's the thing. I don't think they needed it. And now that
They
they're
were the one Wraith HQ choice.
they were.
You could run, you could
Yeah.
run full Wraith army at that point.
I hate they're trying to make it like the Spirit Seer is supposed to be a Wraith HQ.
HQ, yeah.
So so that one has the rerolls for Wraith units,
Oh, that's right, yeah.
not for any other.
Right.
So that's the whole point of the Spirit Seer. That was supposed to be the HQ for Wraiths.
Ah, okay, yeah.
Yeah, right. Anyway, but I mean, look, this is the problem. This is part of the problem. I mean, I guess, look, I say it's a problem, but at least there's a solution. Where like you and I are in the same boat. You know, I have to take 3 to 4 Forge World models to compete in a tournament at minimum. The same thing.
Well,
with
not
you,
even to
literally
compete in a
half
tournament,
points.
just to keep up on our casual games that we're playing.
Yeah.
Well, that's,
I mean,
yeah,
and
sure.
that's
The
just
Necrons and
exacerbated.
The Dark
and-
Eldar and the
Yeah,
Dark
exactly.
Angels.
And it's just made even worse when you do go to a tournament.
Yeah.
Because, and yeah, it is what it is. It's fine. You
Like that tournament's going to come around, and there's going to be no Forge World units allowed, and then we are really up shit creek.
well,
to say the least.
we have missed a few tournaments because of good old Rona. She's
Old Rona.
helped out a lot with that one.
Ooh, yes.
So we missed a tournament that would have happened 2 weeks ago, which is called Winter Wipeout in
Yep.
Geelong. All of these
Yep.
tournaments are in Geelong, mind you. That was shattering because that was one of the one that we were all going to go to as a group, and it was
Yeah.
that we'd all been
It was
prepping
gonna be
for
great.
like 2 months, and
Months.
you know.
Playing the same list over and over again.
Yeah, we
Yeah.
did it all proper and everything, and then the latest lockdowns hit, and they cancelled it, and understandably they didn't postpone it; they just full canned it. We get that, I totally understand that.
Yep.
And there's a lot goes into them. Can't hold it against them.
I
for
mean,
that.
given that the lockdown did then happen, I think it was the right choice because otherwise it just
Yeah.
wouldn't have happened anyway.
Yeah, of course.
um,
Yeah.
But it's still shattering to not be able to go.
Yeah, and we had plans to document it and be there and whatever. And now at the same time, also we were planning to go to the normal Blokes GT up in Queensland,
Yep.
and
Which is
that's also
in
been
a week and a half, I think.
canned in a week and a half.
So
yeah,
I think
18th.
it'll be a week after this comes out.
Yeah, so our lockdown here finishes on the 23rd. Well, in quotation
At the moment
marks,
it does.
Finishes, yeah, at the moment
Well,
it does.
yes.
But
Yeah.
it won't. And that tournament, I think, was on the 20th or the 21st or something.
No, it's the
and again,
18th and 19th, I think.
There you go, 18th and 19th. And we'd spoken to them, and it was really... Because they do a really good podcast, if you guys haven't heard of it.
They do.
Head over there and check it out. They cover their more competitive... Well, entirely competitive stuff. And they're all seasoned competitive players, and they all seem like really nice blokes.
There's some pretty major names in the Australian scene over there.
Yeah. Queensland's quite a big hub for it, seems.
Yeah.
So that was also really shattering because, again, Dalton and myself had plans to do some promo stuff with them and basically create a show and an episode really about that tournament and what the boys are doing up there and all that sort of stuff. So again, thanks Rona.
Yeah.
And then a few of the guys from the club are going to this one in October. This law-abiding citizen.
I think they were talking about it. There's a so there's a tournament in October in Geelong. Law-abiding citizens. I think it's target acquired.
That's
running.
the TO, yeah. That's
So it's a target acquired running it, and it's 40k law-abiding citizens, which is more of a comp tournament. And I think you had a few things to say about that, Locky.
I don't get it. I don't get it. Look.
So basically, Locky hates people having fun. And,
no, it's not. It's so not that. Okay, look. Sometimes, but it depends. Like, I have very specific thoughts about things like gotchas, about things like prior knowledge, all those kinds of things. I'm a pretty competitive person, and I get that obviously people want to go for fun and whatever. But calling a tournament is competitive. There's a winner. They win prizes. You don't go to make friends. Yeah, like you do. And you should. It should be fun.
Yeah.
But when it's like you don't. If you're a tennis player, you're not telling the tennis player where you're doing, like where your next shot's gonna go, or the coaches aren't like having a bet on who's like telling each other their strategies. Like, so why should it happen on our side? It's the same thing with restrictions, like with comp tournaments saying that you have to have a certain type of unit in your army, or where we're only restricting, like this one is, to one player per faction per sub faction. I just don't.
Right. So just very quickly, just to give a bit of context here, it's a tournament out in Geelong. Is it part of the circuit, or is it just separate from that?
No, it's separate. I think
it's an independent one, and basically, as people sign up, they tell them which faction they're going to be playing, or which sub faction, and there's only going to be one allowed of each. So one Ultramarines, one Ulthway, etc.
Yeah. So like one High Fleet Behemoth, one Kraken, whatever.
Exactly. Yeah. And then there's more restrictions on you can only bring things from that same sub faction. You can't be souping. And then there's extra changes and bits and pieces and restrictions on what you can and can't bring.
There are, and I've heard this for a while now with a few other tournaments. And to be honest, from a lot of the other competitive podcast stuff that I listen to and stuff, it's very, very common in Victoria to do that, and has been for a very long time apparently. And which is fine. It's like, again, it's enjoyment. But when you want to be treated as a competition, like you want to be ranked, you want to say I won this tournament. If you say I won this tournament, or what'd you do? Oh, it was a comped one where I was restricted and I had to take certain units. You're like, well, you're not really, you've got no bragging rights over saying you're better than someone else, in my opinion anyway, because you're not taking the best of what you can. There's too many limitations on models, therefore it's not a true test of the general. That's what I think personally, because list building is a key component of the game, and building for who you're playing with, and knowing everyone's armies and all that sort of stuff. So look,
right, yeah,
I'll just leave it
and
there.
I mean, like, from a more serious point, rather than just having a go at Locky, you do have a point there, which is that a tournament as a competitive event, if you're trying to sell it as a Warhammer 40k tournament, and you're changing the core set of rules that makes up like the basic Warhammer 40k, then you're kind of changing the game as a whole. And I mean, like, the event itself, like I've been to events and little like, you know, casual in-house tourneys. Like I went to one down, or was going to one down at the local G-Dub a couple of years back now, where they had I don't think they called it a tournament. It was just an event they were running where, all right, come along with the 40k army, but you're not it's not a rule of 3, it's a rule of 1. You can only bring one of each unit, and you've got to do this and that. And it was great fun, but it wasn't a competitive thing. And I think everyone went into it going, let's go along and have fun and do something a bit different and play with some different units. But it wasn't. We didn't go into it going, this is a tournament where we're going there to play against each other and determine who's the better general.
And I think that's the distinction. Is they need to stop calling these things tournaments, or they need to stop calling them ranked, or they just need a different title for them. There needs to be an additional title where it's I don't know, maybe just call it competition. Or, I don't know. I actually don't like it. I don't have a solution for it. I'm being that kind of person, complaining about something without giving a solution, which isn't good. But I just think, when you're dealing with money, you know, when you can win stuff, you're dealing with rankings that's, you know, globally recognized. If it's ICC or WTC or whatever, you know, there has to be a level playing field. It just has to be. And my personal opinion is that if 40k wants to be taken serious, like a lot of people want it to, in the eyes of, say, like esports or those kinds of things, there needs to be a unanimous kind of understanding regarding that stuff, so that these kind of comp things aren't referred to as tournaments, and that there is a much more stricter rule of control regarding, you know, essentially like a governing body like the ITC and all those sort of things, but that trickles down and is a bit more specific. That's all.
Yeah. So yeah, I suppose the one last thing that I'll bring up before the end of the podcast is an issue I raised in the first one, and it's a core central issue to the central issue of 40k in our time.
100%.
Which is, of course, laser animations on Warhammer TV.
Yeah.
Now, but by the time this podcast comes out, the second and third episodes of Angels of Death will have come out, and this isn't an Angels of Death review. That's not what we're doing here. But
mind you, we wouldn't have watched the third episode.
We haven't seen the third episode, but it will be out by the time this podcast does come out. But in the second one, we get to see some lasguns in action and a multi-laser, which is pretty cool.
Which was really cool, actually. That was one thing.
It was, yeah.
And how do you feel?
And so
about
did I.
That, Dalton?
They were epic. Lasguns looked amazing. They were red like Dawn of War. They were a lovely, nice, unbroken beam. They looked like lasers reflecting off atmospheric dust and particles and stuff, flashing across the battlefield. It was fantastic. The multi-laser, which has laser entirely spelled out in the name, looked like multiple lasers being fired in quick succession. Beautiful. Gorgeous. Now,
but it was
the
white.
problem with that, it was white, yeah. Yeah, I mean, again, the color of light depends on the frequency, which is not necessarily relevant to anything at this point. It's a different color laser. Whoop-de-doo.
So it would make sense that it actually, because it's bigger or whatever, it would be different. Like, right. You know, potentially. That's a question. That's not a statement.
You could probably make an argument. You could make an argument either way. I'm more than happy to sit on the argument and say, yeah, you know what? It's a bigger weapon. It's collimated in a different manner, and it's a multi-laser. It's white because you're combining multiple different frequencies of laser to do it. Sure, why not?
Okay, all right. I like that.
Right. So Charlie, to fill you in on what this was, in Old Baelai and Hammer and Bolter, there's a bunch of animations of lasguns because there's a whole bunch about the Guard and Yarrick.
Yep.
And they made them fire in like
Star Wars lasers.
Packets, like Star Wars blasters. Yeah.
Yeah, they're Star Wars blasters.
Yeah, in little short bursts where you can see a projectile traveling, essentially.
Yeah,
it's like a bullet laser, right?
Yeah. Now, lasers are light. That's what they are. And so they should appear as a single unbroken beam across the entire span of its path, all in one instant, because we're not going to perceive it anywhere near the speed of light.
Indeed. Yes. That makes sense.
So one of my biggest peeves is in a lot of recent animations, including, I don't think I mentioned it last time, but including the fan animation guardsmen. They appear like Star Wars blasters, which are canonically in Star Wars plasma weapons. Just to clear that up, they're not lasers. They're firing plasma.
So this was
so-
really last episode, real butthurt, and I get it. It makes sense. So keep going.
Right. So anyway, so in Hammer and Bolter they got this wrong, and they got it wrong in Darktide, the new trailers for that, and also in the Kill Team animation. They had them fire like Star Wars blasters, and it really ticked me off, because everything else about those was fantastic.
Right.
Now in Angels of Death, they nailed it. The las guns look perfect. The multi-laser looks amazing. And they fire like lasers. The problem with that is that it means that someone in the Warhammer TV or Storyforge team, somewhere there, knows that that's the way lasers should look.
Knows what they're doing, basically.
And
Right, okay, and they're not telling everybody else.
And for whatever reason, that little bit of information, again, they got it right in Dawn of War years ago. Presumably that was Relic and whoever they had animating that doing that. But still, somewhere there's someone, in fact there's an entire animation team that knows the way lasers should look. And for whatever reason, that just didn't filter down to everyone else.
Well, I think...
And I don't understand why.
Two things to count, not to counter at all. But the first one is, I know why it's not like that in Darktide, because it's a video game and video games need to reflect functionality.
Right, yeah.
Because if they do something in their cinematic and it's not like that in the gameplay, gamers will lose their minds, because of like, you lied.
Doesn't excuse them using a las gun.
No.
I mean,
True,
it doesn't
but
excuse
still,
it. It just means they should have used a different weapon skin.
Fine.
They should have skinned the weapon like a plasma gun or like a stubber or something. But yes, that makes sense.
And then the other issue is that we know for a fact, because GW has said that no one on their team did the Kill Team animation. That was done by an external animation team. So that's why. Is because it's probably just they've gone, this is what we want, here's the media, here's the resources, we want something back in 9 months.
But it means there's no central art document that goes, this is the way a las-gun looks and functions in an animation. This is the way a bolter looks and functions in animation.
Well, you're seeing a recurring theme here, right? There's no one proofreading stuff. Yeah? Just like the codexes, how there's literal grammar errors.
Yeah.
It's like they don't have they don't employ an editor. They obviously don't employ some like head of art person to like look over this stuff before it goes to release. So that's just how GW. Maybe that's the thing. They go, look, we've come
that
so
could
far
be it.
now. We've done this for 35 years. We've just got to keep it going, because if we changed it, people would be like, what's happened?
If we turned around and started actually talking between departments and getting things consistent,
I know, right? Making sense. Like we said, it's still look, it's amazing.
Hey, I mean, I tell you what other animation got it correct. Astartes.
But there's nothing bad about that.
Oh no, they got the las guns and stuff brilliantly. The
dude's a legend.
He is.
Like, amazing.
Yes. So fans can get it right, but GW can't send out a memo saying, look, las guns, they're lasers, guys. Let's do this. Come on. I mean, there are plasma guns in 40k. We have those. Those are a thing.
Yeah.
How are they going to animate them next to las guns?
Look, I doubt when they made it that they ever thought it was going to get this big, where they actually had to, be mindful of these kinds of things. But
be mindful of science.
I mean, look,
at the end of the day,
they didn't think one guy on an Aussie podcast would pick him up. Grievous. Yeah. Yeah.
Indeed.
Yeah, and we're not gonna get into the look. I think we actually might do a full season review of Angels of Death.
I'm
Gonna tell you
there's
right
no might
now.
about it. I think we'll definitely do a full season review and discussion about it.
And there's going to be some very angry comments from me. I'll tell you right now already. Some things we're not happy about at all, and it's actually got nothing to do with like their story or their dialogue or anything. It's literally just a technical thing. It's just like, ah. But anyway, we'll save that for another day.
Right. Yeah.
I think that's about it, isn't it?
Yeah, I think that pretty much wraps us up for today. Charlie, thank you so much for coming on and being our first guest.
Well, thank
on
you
the
for having
podcast.
me. It's been fun. Thanks for having me.
First of many, we hope, and we definitely hope to have you back again.
I will be back.
Well,
for
we'll
sure.
have you on the channel too.
Bring my
Absolutely.
bring my Eldar or bring my Orcs. Who knows? Bring the
Both. I definitely want to get those races on the table.
Yes, I'm down.
Yep.
Right. I do love them.
And
They're
the
my
Green
babies.
Tide for sure.
Aw,
Yeah.
And don't forget
absolutely.
to anyone, if you guys want to check out Charlie's stuff, check the link in the description and reach out to him on Instagram, say what's up, buy his terrain, don't buy his terrain, whatever.
I'm a nice person.
Yeah, just say what's up, talk Eldar, I'm sure. Jump on the Discord, you can find us all there, come play TTS with us. You know, the works, we're pretty approachable, just laid back Aussie dudes that get pretty obsessed and passionate about 40k and lasers.
But yeah, so thank you for listening wherever it is. If you listen to us on YouTube, like and drop a comment and chat to us there. If you're listening to us on one of the other
review that
platforms,
stuff. Give us the 5 stars or the 4, whatever.
Oh,
But the
yeah.
5 would be great. Apparently, yeah,
The
it
5 would
does
be
help.
fantastic.
It does help. It does help a lot.
It really does, yeah. So thank you guys for listening, and we hope to have you all listening again next week for episode 4.
Oh, yeah. Bye bye, everybody.
Bye.
See ya.